Hello everyone, I'm gonna talk about the difference between let, const and var in JavaScript. Oh, basically there are many confusions about it. So I hope this video will clear all your doubts. So let's get into the topic. So as I said, my topic is differences between let, var and const. So first I'm gonna talk about var variables. So var variables are used to create global scoped variables or function scoped variables. If you omit a var declaration from a function, it will be global variable. So I'm sorry about that. Excuse me. A global variable. So the global variable will be available in everywhere in the window. You know that, you already know that. And um, the function scope means if we if you declare a variable with var statement, that will be only available inside that function, and the child functions inside that function. So that's the main thing about var variable. Their scope is a functional scope or global scope. And the next one, the speciality of var variable is, when we talk about var variables, they can be redeclared somewhere. So there may be a chance to replace the previous value. So I will talk about it. So we can basically we can redeclare the var variables somewhere in our program, like with the same name. Okay, if I declare a var a variable, I can redeclare that variable somewhere in the program with the same name. Also, if they are in the same scope, if we declare a variable with the same name in the same scope with the var statement, it will be replace the first declared value, and there is a chance to differ our output. So our output will be an unexpected output that we have not expected. So that's one of the problem with this var statement. That is, it's not a problem if we knowingly do that, but it gets a problem, it makes some problem. It will not make sense sometimes that um, if we declare that variable again unknowingly. So there may be many line of codes in our program, so we may have a chance to forget the variable names that we have declared before. So at that time, if we redeclare that variable in the same name, it will be replaced the first value that we have assigned, or it got from anywhere from the program. So at that time, our there will be it will be produced an unexpected output. So that's the problem with one of the problem with var the variables that we declare using var statement. So basically, was someone there are many misconceptions, like var, let, const are the variable data type. So that's not a data type. It's actually the statement to declare variables. So in JavaScript, you know that using var, let, const variables, we can there is no matter of data type. Any data type can be declared using these keywords. So that's not a data type. That's only a statement to declare variables. So this is all about the variables that I mentioned before. And the next one is let. When we discuss about the let and const, these both are used to declare variable with block scope. Block scoped variables can be created using let and const. So there is a slight difference between let and const, but before that, first we'll discuss about the let and const variables common properties. So if we discuss about it, that let variables and const variables, as I mentioned, it is used to create block scoped variables, or declare block scoped variables. So basically, block means it is delimited within curly braces, that when JavaScript expects a single line of code or single statement, we can group many statements using blocks, and it will behave as a single statement. So whenever JavaScript expects expect whenever JavaScript expects a single statement, uh, there we can use the group of statements by making a block. So you are familiar with blocks. That blocks, as I told, it's delimited with curly braces, pair of curly braces. So we are using for loops if statements in that way in the block. So the property of the block scope is, if you declare a variable inside a block, it cannot be accessed from the outside from that block. So it is delimited within the pair of curly braces. That variable will, if we declare the same variable again in another block as a child block of a parent block, so and if you declare the same variable again, say with the same name, they both are different variables, because their scope is inside that block. It will not it cannot replace the first value or something like that we mentioned in var. So there is a problem, there is no any problem of replacing the value. So they are block scoped. The let and const, the variables that we declared with let and const variables will not cannot be accessed from outside the block. So that is the main thing we have to study about, we have to talk when we talk about let and const variables. So what is the difference between them? Difference between let and const, they are same types. The difference is that const, when we declare a variable with using const, we have to initialize that variable at the time of at the time of declaration itself. Otherwise we will get an error. So that is the difference between let and const. They are very similar, but the difference is that we don't have to, it is optional to give or it is optional to initialize the variable when we use let statement. Otherwise if you use const statement, we must initialize that variable at the time of the declaration itself. Otherwise it will be an error. So and the values we have assigned to the const, the variables with const statement cannot be replaced. So that is the difference between let and const. If we talk about the difference between let, var and const, that first one is, as I told, it is the scope. Their scopes are the first different. Basically the scopes means where a variable can be accessed, the place where the variable can be accessed in the code. So that's about scope. And the scope of the variables, as I mentioned before, that is functional scope or global scope. And the scope of the let and const is inside the block that they have declared. Outside the block we cannot access that. And the next, when we talk about the next difference is let or const variables cannot be redeclared. It will give us an error. It will give us an error if you redeclared a variable in the same scope using when we use const and let statements to declare variable. So let and const variables cannot be replaced, or cannot be excuse me, it's not replacing it. You cannot redeclare that. So that is the another difference between let const and var. Let const and var. So let and const are very similar. So when it is differ something from var variable, and when we declare a var variable, it will make a property inside the global object or global window. And it's not like that in let and const. When we declare let and const, it will not attach a property in the window object or the global object. That is another thing, another difference. And when we talk about the hoisting of this let const and var, var is hosted, and we can access var variables before the declaration or initialization with an undefined value. So hosting means, you know, that it's a phenomenon that we can access a variable before its declaration in JavaScript, because JavaScript first allocates the memory inside the memory in the global execution context. When a global execution context created, first the variables and functions are allocated the memory already, so that we can access that variable before the line of code the line of code the execution reaches the line of code that we have declared that variable. So we can access that before the var the variable that we have declared with the var statement can be accessed before the declaration, because they are hosted and it is an undefined value. It will not give us an error before if we use like that. And the when we talk about the latent const, the reference is that it is hosted, but we cannot access that before its declaration, because it will get an it will be get a results there will be a results like reference error, because uh, the time span between it's like we can call that a temporal dead zone. Temporal dead zone means the time spans that happens between and the variables are hosted or allocated memory and the line of code, the code of the execution of code it reaches at the line of code that the variable has declared. Within this time span we cannot access that variable. If someone tries to access that variable before the execution reaches the line of code that we have declared that variable using let or const statement, we will get an reference error. So these are basically the difference between these let const var and var variables in JavaScript. So hope you understand, and hope all your doubts are cleared. So that's all about my video, so we can see later. Thank you.